Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to episode number 98 of FinalBossTV, your Wild and Get Rating show. Hello, everybody. My name is Adam KK Bay, and I will be your host for this navigation voyage through part 6 of 8 of the Warlords of Ketchup Junket, which is all about tier 18 and the ring meta and seeing how things have changed and how to know what's going on right now or stuff, or just a lot of awkward salt about the trinkets and the ring meta and about that. Well, we'll go with that. Joining me today is one returning and 2 new guests, which you can read above my head, of course, but we'll go introduce them right now. He's apparently too sexy to be on my show in camera. So there's Azortharion. Hello, sir.
Hello. Glad to be back. It's always nice.
Yes, it's been a while now. We talked about hunters quite a number of months ago, so good to have you back on the show.
Back in April. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely good to have you back. Additionally, here's Xyronic for Warlocks. Hello, sir.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this should be good. Yeah, you have a lot of salt for demonology to come out, I hope, maybe a little bit.
I hate the spec anyways, so I'm okay with it being bad.
Oh no! Just hate it?
Oh, I've always hated it. Always hated it.
So you're not gonna have any bleeding heart for Metamorphosis leaving you in Legion?
Nah, I don't really care.
Oh crap! Well, that backfired on me. That's fair enough. Alrighty. Well, then there's Frosted for Mages. Hello, sir.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
Do you have some Doom Nova salt you can give me? Maybe a little bit? I know Chatroom wants it.
A lot, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, whether or not we're going to actually get the salt, I don't know. It's a little RNG, but
we need a little bit of that, right? I mean, after this is post-TwitchCon era, you gotta make sure you have a little bit of that in the stream. But thank you for being here, sir. Should be great to have you all on here, and thank you all so much for... Oops, that's the wrong button. Oh, man. New XSplit update's gonna probably trick me a couple times in the show where we'll get a random black screen because I'm clicking on the wrong button, but should be just fine. So I guess we'll go around the table again real quick just to get a little more street cred or internet cred from all of our guests today. We'll go back to Frosted first. Why should the internet either know who you are or care about what you have to say, and where do we find your stuffs on said internet, sir?
So I guess I work on general mage problems, right? So I maintain the mage module and the APL for that, and I generate a lot of baseline knowledge for mages. So trinket sims, talent sims, racial sims, gear comparisons, best in slot lists, a bunch of nonsense like that, right? And I host it all over on Ultra Time. So you can go over there and find it. And I guess I'm also not completely awful at rating, so I've managed to complete the tier so far. So I can play decently, and I'm not totally stupid. So those are okay reasons for listening to me, right?
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, Ultra Time is the best place for mage stuff right now, I assume.
It is.
Right? It is.
Yeah, it is. It's a little slow right now. It's definitely slow,
right.
But once the beta comes out and we actually have new interesting things to do instead of nothing at all, then things will pick back up.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Xyronic, sir?
Well, I'm in Limit. You may know me from the Affliction Guide on Summonstone. Rip that website. I also read it in Blood Legion for a couple of years as well. So, and I've been streaming for about 3 years as well. So that's my street cred.
That's it? Yeah, just that? That's good.
Yeah, I'm just a warlock that raids in the US.
You can't say anything else about the development that might happen in Legion? Is that for my ears only, or is that for everyone else?
No, not yet.
No, okay, fair enough. Well, we'll just tease Chatroom with that one then. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all they'll get. And who's this guy? Is this Azortharion guy? What does he do on the internet?
I write this hunter guide on Google Docs, and also review the hunter guides over on Icy Veins. And in general, I just kind of dream about hunters and everything they're about. So yeah, I've devoted my life to that, it seems.
They're kind of good right now, right? So you probably have a lot of good dreams?
Yeah, the dream is bigger and better than it's ever been before.
Fair enough. Well, I'm glad to have you all on the show today, of course, to talk about hunters, mages, and warlocks. And there's a weird theme between the pure DPS classes right now, the pure range DPS class, like I should say, where a little less for Warlock, even though it was meant to be like this, but there's sort of like 2 specs you can play, and one that's like the best and one that you can go to, and then like a third one that's just dead, right? So that's going to be an interesting sort of situation between everything today. I don't know how, if that's like planned. I know that from tier to tier, the classes do sort of like change, and what the flavor of the month spec is, or what one that was nerfed or buffed the most is the one you play and not play. So I guess so. When last I spoke about Warlocks, things were a little bit different, with sort of demonology being like the is-all be-all Xyronic. But so like, what's changed now for
Right.
for
Warlock? If I remember correctly, the last time you did a show about Warlocks was during Heroic Week, when Demonology was still pretty good because they were using the tier 17 set bonuses.
Yeah.
Since then, Affliction and Destro both got buffed, and as we got more gear, they outshined Demonology in almost everything but burst AoE. But the specs still played pretty much the same. Nothing big has been changed.
Nothing's been changed? So like,
the play style hasn't really changed. Affliction's your best single target spec right now. Demo's still your best burst AoE spec, and Destro is just kind of the overall, not one of those 2 other things. It does everything well.
So then I guess how has things gone with like your enchanting and gemming focus? How about like the tier 18 bonuses for the 3 specs? Like, have they worked out now that you've had it for this long?
I mean, the bonuses really aren't too great. They don't really change they don't change the play style much at all. But as far as gemming and enchanting goes, you basically just go mastery for everything. You can argue going haste for Affliction, but mastery sims almost exactly the same as haste, and mastery is better in multi-target situations as well. So you just basically go mastery for everything.
So that makes gear swapping pretty easy then, I suppose.
Very easy, yes.
Yeah. There's no like difference in like weapon chance or anything like that? It's just mastery everything and
nope.
Nothing.
Mastery all the way.
Mastery.
Gems and chants. It's really easy.
So then I guess the weird broad strokes here between the 3 specs is that Affliction was like sort of wanted to be changed, make this single target monster, and then they wanted you to play Destruction as like this one that was okay on single target but had like this cool burst AoE component or whatnot, and then they wanted you to totally gut Demonology, but then I don't think they realized in all the class balance or the raid balance that every fight basically has like these burst AoE phases that it's so much better to have. So that's why Demonology's still not nerfed into the ground.
Right. And actually, before the buffs that were about, I want to say 4 weeks into this tier, before the buffs, Affliction, which is supposed to be your single target, powerhouse, it was actually worse than Destruction on single target, and that's why they buffed it. But yeah, other than that, not too many other changes. Demonology is still crazy ridiculous, and if they didn't nerf it, it'd be the best on everything still. So it's kind of a good thing they nerfed it.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like they tried to like make sure the lesser of 2 evils were down. If it's still going to be good on burst AoE situations on certain encounters, say like maybe Zul'Harrak, Manaroth, Kormrock, then it's okay, because if they didn't nerf it, you just play the whole spec, the whole tier.
Exactly.
So you wouldn't have any drawback at all. So fair enough. Alrighty then. Azortharion, Hunters, sir. Been a little while. What's changed for them? They've had a bit of a upward and downward spiral between the 3 specs,
Yeah, well, last year, partly due to the tier 17 4-piece bonus and the pet that it spawns during Bestial Wrath, Beast Mastery was by far and away the best spec you could play, both for single target and AoE, which was nice and convenient. But then BM lost the synergy between its 2 tier 17 set bonuses, leaving it like as a sort of mediocre spec without those 2. And then they introduced the super OP set bonus for marksmanship, which the 4-piece makes aim shot instant cast, which is not only very good for DPS, like a 15% increase on its own.
Wow.
But it's also very powerful for single target priority bursting, which is very relevant in this particular instance. So yeah, we've gone from all hunters playing Beast Mastery to pretty much the entire raiding scene playing Marksmanship Hunter instead.
It wasn't, and then I say it was like an up and down slow too, because we're like all the hunters playing like survival for Highmall, and then that changed to Beast Mastery and BRF, and now you're all marksman and HFC.
Yeah, I think the short story was we started as marksmanship, and then they I believe they buffed survival, and then we played survival a bit into Blackrock Foundry, and then they buffed Beast Mastery, and so we played Beast Mastery, and now now we're here with marksmanship.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. So I guess now that marksman is probably like the key way to play. I guess you can still play Beast Mastery right now, right? But it's not like it's not optimal. Is that the good word for it?
Yeah, that's a good word. I think it has a place on some encounters, but only on some encounters in some situations. Like on Solarac, it still has superior like burst AoE and just mass AoE. And for guilds that have trouble killing, for example, the wild pyromaniac imps on Solarac, you might still want to go BM for that, which was a bit of a thing on early progression, but not so much anymore.
Fair enough. What about so enchanting, gemming, focus, thoughts like that for gearing for marksman? Then what's the optimal way to go for it?
It's completely switched around from Beast Mastery, which was Haste Mastery, which is the worst stats for marksmanship, which now goes for critical strike and multi-strike.
So what kind of weapon enchant you roll in? Can you do crit or multi-strike, or is there like breakpoints you want to hit, or?
There's a certain breakpoint because like the crit is so powerful because aim shot when it crits it returns focus as well. So besides just doing more damage, it also gives you more focus to do more because it's your focus stump.
Right.
So the deal is that when the target is over 80% health or when you have rapid fire up, the critical strike chance of aim shot is increased by 50%. So accounting for 3% crit suppression on a level 103 boss, that means you at around 47.2% crit.
Okay.
That's the point where a critical strike weapon enchant would take you to 53% crit, which is aim shot always crit point for your burst phase, your opener, and every time you go rapid fire, yeah.
Yeah. And is one of your set bonuses that like randomly proc rapid fire too, so you get that more often? Is that, or am I?
Yeah, that's true. The tier 18 2-piece gives Chimera Shot a 10% chance of giving you 4 seconds of rapid fire.
Right.
Which is actually like just fun fact. And since Chimera Shot can cleave, if it hits 2 targets, it's a double chance, so it's 20% instead of 10%. Which is good to know.
So it works off both individual targets it hits too.
Yeah. Which means that you can get it a lot in some fights, which just like enhances marksmanship even more.
Right.
So yeah, once you get a little bit past that 47.2% crit, and you're like starting to really overcap, you're losing some of the crit that the scope gives you, you'd switch to multi-strike scope for the opening burst primarily.
Interesting. We'll talk about it later when we get a little more into the other parts of what contributes to this, but sniper training was a cool thing that I know that hunters were interested about at the beginning of this expansion, like the new mastery, and then Blizzard wants to like make it even cooler with the Archimon Trinket, but that didn't work out too well. But it's good to see that it's like this. Is it okay that you have to like learn a different playstyle of your class every tier? Like, and every like even the hotfixes that changed from Beast Mastery to Marksman, it's like it's something you have to deal with as a pure DPS class. Is that all right for hunters? I mean, I only bring this up because you guys are going to have the interesting swap in Legion, where one of your classes is going to be one of your specs to be melee, and how's that make you feel?
Like which part of it? Sorry, because I was answering a question in chat briefly.
It was just that like how do you feel about that I don't know if all the pure DPS feel this way, is that you have this, I want to play this spec 'cause I like it, but then it's like just the worst and you can't play it, so you have to learn how to play the other one. Is that thing you just have to deal with as a pure DPS class? Or?
Yeah, sometimes you do, but I think like the opinion of most people playing at least on the high end is that they mostly enjoy doing the high deeps, which mostly just entails, playing the right spec for that. But like, if all specs were equal for me, I'd probably play like Beast Mastery or something. I think that's a bit faster and there's more going for it. So I can, definitely see that be a factor. And the forums, like the Hunter forums, are very split on like the survival melee change, of course, because some people really like the way it is now.
Right.
And like really stick to it, and just seeing it go, like they feel like they've really been punched in the face there.
Fair enough. I understand. So now we get to mages then. Do you like doing the high deeps, Frosted? Is that why you go arcane?
Yeah, that's why I go arcane. Yeah.
So I guess how have things changes for mages? How is the tier 18 stuff? How is the gymming enchanting focus? Because in the same vein with like survival, I don't think mages are playing fire much anymore right now. So
no one serious is really playing fire. How have things changed since tier 17?
Yeah.
For arcane, not really too much. It's still the same single target powerhouse that you knew it as in tier 17, just with a lot more RNG. And now people tend to gear haste over mastery because of the set bonuses. And Frost now is way stronger, right? So Frost was really bad in tier 17, and then the combination of a really strong Trinket, 20% buffs to Frostbolt and Frost Firebolt, and really strong tier bonuses have made Frost now your kind of off-spec, like go-to off-spec, whereas Fire hasn't gotten the same treatment. It got nerfed, actually. Like, it got a minor nerf to its Pyroblast dot coefficient. Didn't get super overpowered set bonuses this time, and got a really bad class Trinket and Trinket selection in general. So we sort of switched from Arcane Fire to Arcane Frost now.
Right. So then what's the gearing mentality then, so you can go back and forth? Is there a way you want to gem and enchant that's optimal for both? Or do you want to swap that around and kind of have different options? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so generally you main spec Arcane and off spec Frost, right? So you end up playing Arcane for more fights. So you can just go haste the entire time, and haste is a really strong stat for Frost on 2 targets, especially once you're lance weaving a lot, right? So you just go haste, put Warsong on your weapon, and don't really ever have to think about it.
That seems simple enough, I guess. There's no back and forth about that. I mean, Warlocks just go mastery, and you're done. So at least it's not too hard, because sometimes when you look at having to go between 2 different specializations, if there's a different or better stat that works for that spec better, then you're like, that could be just a pain in the butt. So at least there isn't a huge back and forth there. So
right.
Haste, good for both Arcane and Frost.
Yep.
So, and I guess in the same way that there are these burst phases for Demonology to be popular and useful for Warlocks, in the same way that Chimera Cleave now is so good. So what fights do you go Arcane on, and what fights do you go Frost on, for examples?
So you go Arcane for any fight where you care about single target damage. So generally Assault, Reaver, Cormorant, almost everything except for Council and Tyrant,
right?
Manaroth and Archimond. So those are the only Frost fights, right? So it's just whether or not you care about single target damage or whether or not you need cleave damage, right? So Frost for cleave, Arcane for single target.
Okay.
Yep.
That seems pretty definitive.
Yeah.
And I guess as a broad spectrum now, how have you all sort of seen the ranged DPS balance? Do Warlocks, Mages, and Hunters all sort of get the same, I guess, placement in your rating situations? Or have you seen that you can just bring Hunters and forget about the other two? Or how does that work? We lost Xyronic's camera, but that's fine.
I think they're pretty equal, right? I think that Mages, Hunters, and Warlocks are all sort of on the same tier, right? Yeah, definitely. Okay. They're the top tier. Everyone else is lower, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Hunters are really good right now, Azortharion, so how...
Yeah. I think the general trend is that while a guild may have 2 Mages, 2 Warlocks, then they'll probably have 3 or maybe 4 Hunters. Mostly because it's a very popular class, so a lot of people playing it. There's a huge recruitment pool for this class, and because they're very attractive, on a raid wide scale, because they're especially just for, I wouldn't say casual, but just average tier play, they're pretty easy to play. And they can really dish out some of the highest priority target numbers of any class in the game.
Yeah, it's an interesting
which
situation.
which is what like the saving grace for like a number of fights, especially just for sniping things that are low health that
Yeah.
other classes would need like a cast time to get rid of. Living Shadows on Archimond. Basically, when you join like a heroic puck for Archimond, they go like hunters do Living Shadows in phase 3, and that's how it is.
Right. We'll have to give Xyronic a little bit of time to get back. He has exploded, it seems, but the show must go on, as it were. So I guess this brings me to like this weird situation with the ranged class, I guess, meta, because the support classes, like the hybrid classes, don't necessarily have. I guess I don't know if it's a weird way to put this without trying to feel like it's devaluing the other three, but like Elemental Shaman's niche right now is so cleave focused that they really fall behind on the other fights, but then you can just bring Frost Mages or Hunters for those encounters. So is there still like this hybrid tax in the ranged DPS world that still exists that you feel because you could just bring Hunters or Frost Mages and not bring an Elemental Shaman, right? I mean, the only fights that Shaman really bring a whole lot, which includes me as enhancement, is that you have Grounding Totem on Void Surges on Zul'Harrak, I suppose, and then you have Windwalk Totem on Gorefiend. That's about it. Is that situation still really prevalent, do you feel, Frosted? Like, does it happen still from your side of things?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a hybrid tax or if it's just pretty poor balancing, right? And the fact that just the hybrids in general they're never going to have the flexibility of a pure class, right? Like it's not possible for that to happen. There's no way one spec can compete with three. So I feel like that's just poor tuning on Blizzard's part, and maybe them not utilizing talents well enough to give you guys options to, say focus less in cleave and more on single target, or really be really good on cleave, so that you're not trivialized so easily by like a mage who can just say, well, I'm arcane now, you're useless, or well, I'm frost now, you're useless, depending on the fight, right?
Yeah. I don't know how it's supposed to be, because if the hybrids are too strong, you can just bring them. But like the pure classes can just respec based on the encounter, and it shouldn't matter because they already have the toolkit there. And as a hybrid, if you're an elemental shaman, that's all you have. You don't go back and forth between elemental and enhancement. You just don't do that. So
right.
I don't know how it's going to be. Maybe
I think the hybrid tax phenomenon is real, but I don't think it's like deliberate choice by Blizzard. I think it's just like an oversight more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, they used to bring the utility. Like I used to have a lot of like off healing, like off burst healing as enhancement shaman, and it felt really strong for a certain point of time. And now that was removed, now I'm this weird like AoE monster sort of, but it has to be like sustained AoE. And there's really no sustained AoE outside of like maybe a fight and a half, in maybe 2 if you want to combine Manaroth's-ish and then Zul'Harrak-ish. But burst classes just dunk it. So, yeah, it's weird. And I can't, if you're watching the live show right now, if you're watching on YouTube right now, you have nothing to do about it, but I can't recenter the cameras until Xyronic reconnects. So, Frosted's camera just got pushed. Yep. But I guess I'll bring up Archimond Trinkets then. We'll move forward into that. And I'll go with Hunter stuff first. I was going to go with Warlock stuff first, but obviously I can't. So I'll move that to a side. The Marksman one, not so good.
No. Like, okay, so at 35, well, okay, basically an introduction to it. It's basically when the further you stand away from the target, the more damage you do to it. Which I guess is a pretty marksmanship-like concept. But it doesn't work because it's slightly undertuned.
Slightly.
Yeah. Well, it takes 35 yards for it to be the best in slot trinket, which is like just short of our normal non-mastery buffed range, which is not, well, it's just not possible to do on most fights. You need the average range to be that, and you can say, well, your average range could be a bit lower if you put like your burst phases far away from the boss.
Okay.
But it's just not consistent. There's so few fights where you can really make use of it, and the tough part about standing far away, especially if you're like dumping your mastery uptime, is that if your target then moves just out of range, it's just like screw that trinket.
What about PvP? You can stand really far away in PvP and get more damage.
I think there's some Ashran item where you can DPS people from 100 yards away.
Oh my god.
Or something. And you can, combine those two, and yeah, that's pretty good.
But that doesn't really work for the global thing. And Xyronic's back. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Hey, hope I didn't mess anything up.
I mean, it does something. So, all right. And so how about Archimon Trinket for Warlocks, then?
Archimon Trinket for Warlocks? Well,
Yeah.
it depends on whether or not you have a heroic or mythic one.
Well, I mean, once you have the mythic one, you're on farm, so...
Right. Well, okay, that's true. So as far as progression goes, the heroic Archimon Trinket is your BIS single target trinket for destruction. It's BIS in almost all situations for demo, except for arguably burst AoE. And for affliction, the heroic one is pretty mediocre. But once you get a mythic trinket, it's basically BIS for everything.
For everything?
Right.
So it makes that farming easier, but progression...
Right.
Okay, that's fair. What's the reason why Demonology wouldn't want to use it for a burst AoE? Is it better just...
You wouldn't want to use it for burst AoE. So like on fights where you're trying to go for burst AoE damage, you're better off using a prophecy instead because it can help you do more AoE damage. The trinket itself is more just a single target damage increase as well as a fury gain. So you can accurately pull fury for burst AoE without the extra fury that the trinket gives you.
Okay.
So it's not really necessary for AoE damage.
Okay. That's fair. But it still has, obviously, benefits for affliction and destruction,
Right.
you said, right? So
Yeah, it's for any multi-target fight, it's BIS for affliction, regardless of what
okay.
difficulty one you have, and for single target, the mythic one is just straight up best.
All right. Not too bad. Frosted, how's the Mage Archimon Trinket working out for the 3 different specs? I guess 2, really, but,
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to say all 3, it's sort of feast or famine. For Arcane and Frost, they're easily best in slot, regardless of the item level that you're using. But for Fire, it's worse than, I think, every trinket in Blackrock Foundry.
Oh my god.
It's really bad. Like, even on AoE fights, you need, like, 6 or, like, 12, I think, sustained targets for it to be worthwhile, and that just doesn't exist.
Yikes.
So it's really bad there. But for Arcane and Frost, you use it on every single fight. Except for, I think you might switch it out on Zul if you're playing Arcane and your main job is like killing the Void Fiends. So it's not very useful there, right? Like it only affects your burn phase DPS. So if you need like sustained DPS throughout, so constantly killing Void Fiends, you might switch it out for another flat intellect trinket. But besides that, it's best in slot.
All right. Well, that's not too bad between the 3. I guess just the one that's the total miss is the Marksman one. You didn't mention, like, if you play Beast Mastery, is the Archimon for Beast Mastery any good?
Yeah, it's very good. It extends the damage bonus, in fact, from Bestial Wrath on your pet, so it extends from 10 seconds, I believe, to 50 seconds.
Holy, what?
Yeah, just the damage bonus. It's basically almost just like a flat pet damage increase.
Okay.
And with so much damage, put into the pet, it's a pretty good trinket.
All right. Well, again, I want to make the caveat that you can still play Beast Mastery if you want. So I always make the funny little jab that you can play pretty much any spec in this game right now except Survival Hunter and Gladiator Warrior.
Yeah.
But even though...
It's an additional 30 seconds, just
okay.
to clarify, so don't look stupid.
Additional 30 on top of the duration it already has. Okay, yeah.
It extends the Bestial Wrath and increases your pet's damage by a certain amount depending on the difficulty level.
Alrighty. And since I wiggled this around from earlier, I'll keep going with Hunter stuff right now, but the other agility trinkets. So you've got the Mirror the Blade Master, the Sensor, and the Fellspring Coil, which is weird because you don't get to use the Soul Capacitor as a Hunter. I mean, I guess you can if you want to run into melee. Is that how it works? But like...
No, because I think it's like in the game you can only like the melee DPS can equip it.
Right. Okay. Yep. But that's weird. You still only get 3 trinket choices then.
Yeah, we do. because like in game, the soul capacity is only rogue, shaman, monk, and druid, just restricted to that.
So
you're limited to the mirror and the sensor and the coil.
Yep.
And here the mirror is extremely overpowered. Mostly and especially like for people that are not strictly doing mythic, because you basically summons like 4 copies of yourself that deal a static amount of damage, but are buffed by all your other stats. But it's not like there was some misconceptions back in the day about how if you did like a heavy chimera shot, they would copy that and do extra more damage, but it's not affected by the damage you're doing. They're sort of their own unit, and the damage that these Fellstorm mobs do does not scale with the Trinket's eye level. It's always super high, actually. So the only thing that changes from normal to heroic to mythic is the amount of static agility, which they do scale for, but it's not like a direct scaling with eye level on the Trinket, which means that even the normal one is better than any other mythic Trinket.
I believe, wasn't it confirmed on Twitter that the Blade Master mirrors scale with your agility for the raw damage, and then they spin faster when they have more, based on your haste, right?
Yeah, and they can also multi-strike and crit, so they basically do it all.
Okay. So, mirror the Blade Master, good to go. What about like sensors and Fellspring Coil? I guess for marksman, what do you...
Well, because
or
the
older trinkets.
Well, yeah, I'll come into that actually. The malicious sensor is very proc heavy, which marksmanship likes because it has a really big opener. It has a 2-minute cooldown that lines up with the ring as well, and in general, you just dish out a bunch of damage in the start of the fight, where you'll of course have this really proc heavy trinket. The thing is that when you get a proc heavy trinket on progression, it won't be up for. It won't always be up for when you want it on such things as priority targets. And so while the Fell Coil might be a bit less DPS, maybe like 600 DPS if they are equal eye level, it'll always be available for the priority targets. And your general priority on, I'll use that word a lot, on progression is consistency, especially on priority targets. When it comes to like Doomfire Spirits and stuff, you always want, 10 stacks. You don't want like 10 stacks if you get a good pull and then like 13 if you don't or whatever.
Right.
So like I'd say the short answer is progression, Fell Coil, mirror, and like farm, or like if you just don't care, it's sensor mirror.
Okay.
And then that leads us back into the old Trinket from Blackrock Foundry on Chromock, who drops the Beating Heart of the Mountain, which is a 2k-ish multi-strike on a 2-minute cooldown, so an unused Trinket, which lines up with both the ring and rapid fire. So, like, on the surface, it seems like a pretty good Trinket, and it is for those phases. And you might think, well, that's insane for Gorefiend. But the thing is that not only is the, just drawing in on the Gorefiend example, not only is the primary role of hunters in that fight to do to use the force hit bonus to deal a lot of ant damage, it's also you just won't be up for that, right? It'll buff your damage a lot in total. You'll do a lot of damage on the feast phases, and you'll probably top damage meters and everything. But at least in this point in the tier, the actual enrage time on the boss or the cutting phase ones you have to do off is not like as valuable as just trying to do the phase ones that you do get more smoothly.
Right.
So, in short, it's a pretty good trinket for DPS, but not necessarily as much for progression.
Gotcha. So it's for scumbag rankings, what you're saying right now, right?
It's not like scumbag to use it, but I think like you can also say like, okay, well, also like, what's the difference? Like 500, 600 DPS, I might as well just go with the sensor, right? But that's part of the fun, just trying to get the most out of your choices that you make.
Oh, sure, you're not wrong there. I gotcha. It's weird to see which old trinkets that are still like 11 to 15 eye levels back still sort of have a place. Very, very small amounts of them, but there's still a couple that stick around. So Warlock stuff then. In Trinkets, we'll move on to use Xyronic. So you've got the Desecrated Shadow and Insignia, the Unblinking Gaze of Sith, the Prophecy of Fear, and the Iron Reaver Piston. How do these all work out? And then I'll toss it over to Frosted, of course, for mages.
Right. So it's I have you've written down here that the Desecrated Shadowmoon insignia looks really simple, and it is really simple. But as far as Warlocks go, that's basically everything you want in a trinket.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier, Mastery is our best stat. It has passive Mastery on it. It's an intellect proc on a with a 20-second timer. Well, our main cooldown is a 20-second cooldown. So it lines up perfectly with our cooldowns, and because one of our talents gives us an extra cooldown to use, you can throw that out whenever you get one of these trinket procs. So Desecrated Shadowmoon insignia, if you're playing a Warlock, you want to get your hands on one of these. This is going to be your best trinket through almost all of farm, and progression as well, if you can get a heroic one pretty early on.
Okay.
Unblinking Gaze and Prophecy, they're kind of just, if you still have Blackrock trinkets, these are slightly better, but they're kind of gamey. They're not really that great overall. Prophecy of Fear can be used for demo. It scales with your mastery as demo. So if you're in Metamorphosis and you touch a Chaos, your Prophecy proc, you can do a lot of damage for AoE, but it's really not great for the other two specs. Affliction, the only thing that procs Prophecy is Haunt. Not even your Malefic Grasp procs it.
Really?
So it's pretty terrible.
That's weird.
An Iron River Piston, it's good for longer fights, but so maybe on progression, maybe on like a Tyrant Valhari, if it's like a 6 or 7 minute fight, you could use Iron River Piston to be better for you. But that's really the only situation Iron River Piston is worth using.
Because as you said before, your Archimon trinket is really good for both Affliction and Destruction too. So you kind of have like only one slot to pick there. So I guess just the DSI then.
DSI is basically what you want to go for.
Okay.
And then you can back off on the other two if you just aren't lucky and don't get a DSI.
I mean, you could, because the Prophecy of Fear is kind of weird for Warlocks, I guess you could take the Unblinking Gaze if you wanted to have a little bit extra, like AoE or Cleave, technically. You just got to position right for that, right? So the beam, like, goes over top of what you want to hit as well, or...
Well, I find that as far as passive trinkets go, Unblinking Gaze is just worse than Iron Reaver Piston in every single aspect. It's better just to have the passive stats. So, yeah, I mean, you don't really ever use Unblinking Gaze. And the other trinket that's not listed here, Goran Soul Repository. If you have a Mythic Goran Soul Repository, that's basically BIS for any target switching fight for Destro. I still use it on our Archimon rekills every week, and I used it for all of progression as well. Wow. So Goran Soul Repository is a very good trinket as well.
So there you go. Another creeping up trinket from the last tier. There's a couple like that, yeah. All right, then. Frosted, take it away from mages. Because this is a totally different flip-flop almost from Warlocks, because there's a little bit of Doom Nova.
Yeah, a little bit of Doom Nova. I mean, it's a little similar to Warlocks in that we only really have one open slot, right?
Sure.
We're using the Archimon trinket for Arcane and Frost. And you really don't care about the insignia too much. It's not a bad trinket if it's like a higher, so like if you have a mythic insignia, it's probably better than like a heroic gaze. But if we're talking about like equal item level or like tier plane, generally as Arcane, you definitely want to pick up Prophecy. It's like game-changing DPS.
A little bit.
I don't even think like without a Prophecy, you can compete with a mage with Prophecy. Like it's a huge, huge difference for an Arcane mage. So definitely pick up Prophecy if you're, forget all the other ones, they're garbage. For a Frost Mage, you tend to want Blinking Gaze of Seath, and you don't really want the other ones. The stat stick, Iron Reaver Piston is pretty bad. The insignia is pretty bad for Frost. So yeah, just Tome Trinket and Gaze if you're Frost, Tome Trinket and Prophecy if you're Arcane.
Now, why do you suggest anything like weak auras to track when the Doom Nova procs and like what target to switch to and like automatically start casting arcade missiles, or like is there like a what do you have for that?
I have a weak aura that so I have two. I have one that shows like a giant icon that blinks when it's my current target that has the Doom Nova proc on it. And then I have a smaller one that whenever a Doom Nova proc is applied to any target, so like, you know, if you're in an AoE situation with like multiple mobs, it'll show that target's name up, right? So then I immediately just switch to that target, and if I have missiles, I start dumping all my missiles into it, right? So that's what you want to do. Whenever it procs, you ignore everything else and dump all your missiles into it as quick as you possibly can, and get as many explosions as you can out of it, right?
Now, how you brought up the whole Feast and Famine thing with mages a little earlier. How is it with Doom Nova in that regard too? Because I know from my experience running with two mages who both can do, I don't know, 400k on an opener or not even be top 7. So how does that like consistency or that issue run with, you just kind of like deal with it? I guess you kind of get used to the gaminess of Doom Nova as an
You
arcane
just do.
mage.
It's not even like the gaminess of it. It's just the fact that because Arcane can abuse the Trinket so heavily with Arcane Missile, with every Arcane Missile impact proccing the Trinket, they lowered the proc rate for it, right?
Right.
And so lower proc rates tend to be much more swingy in terms of like what RNG they have. The proc rate's so low that you don't get the guaranteed proc on the opener, so it makes the opener much more susceptible to RNG. On top of like, do I have missiles when the proc happens? That's RNG on top of that, and then there's also the RNG of your pets, right? So your set bonuses, right? So when you spawn pets, which are procced off missiles, which is RNG,
Okay.
they give you bonus damage, right? So there's like all of these different things that need to proc and line up to get a lot of damage out of it. And the end result is that you have an arcane spec that is like more RNG heavy than fire is, right? Which is really crazy if you think about the history of fire and how it's been.
No, it definitely has been a weird tier in that regard. Where I didn't mean gaminess that you're gaming something. Like, gaminess for me is when the soul capacitor procs and I can like fire Nova into it and then blow up on the boss for ridiculous amounts of damage. That's like gaming. I think that in the reverse, the Prophecy of Doom Nova like games the mage, because you can either get, you know, a great string of them, or it'll proc right after you've cast missiles. You've got no missiles up right now, then you can just like arcane blast it, I guess, right? So it games you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's you know when Doom Nova procs on a mage on a pull or at certain parts of the
Yeah.
fight, because you see it happen.
Yeah,
It
you definitely know.
happens. Yeah. Absolutely. In the same, I guess, way that like a rogue or enhanced shaman like knows when a soul capacitor procs, because all of a sudden they just go like no damage, and then oh there they are. So
Right.
yeah, it's weird like that. We have trinkets that are interactive in that regard, I suppose, because I know we just did strength DPS and they have nothing. It's passive burn, passive giant fell lava lash cleave. Okay. So it's funny how their trinket design has given certain classes and specs like cool interaction ones, and then others like meh.
Yeah, I don't think that they maybe intended for us to have it be this thing where when it procs, we ignore all other like considerations and just start blowing missiles into it.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I like that either. But it's happened, right?
It definitely
I prefer
has.
a passive. I'd honestly prefer a passive, consistent trinket over an interactive, RNG laden one. To be honest with you.
I guess this is like a polling question before I bring up the orange rings for all three of you. I'll go with Frosted first. Do you feel that maybe the game should only have like one trinket slot and it'd be something interactive and neat? Because like having two where one just sits there and one is cool, would you rather have like one trinket slot and then be like always kind of interactive and cool? Or is that never going to happen in World of Warcraft? What do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a brain teaser.
That's a weird one. I guess it comes down to. I mean, I don't really care either way. I guess I prefer interactive trinkets, right? Whether or not there's one interactive trinket or two interactive trinkets, I don't really care. I'd prefer one because there's less combinations of weird things that could happen and make my life easier to figure out what to do.
Right.
So that would be nice. But I definitely prefer interactive trinkets over passive ones.
What do you think,
If they're
Xyronic?
consistent.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What do you think, Xyronic?
Interactive trinkets are fun if they're not like terribly implemented.
Right.
Like, as for instance, our class trinket for destruction, it's a good trinket and it is interactive, but it's terrible to use because it it works off of your incinerate travel time. And if you've ever seen an incinerate cast, it kind of goes back and forth until it hits the boss. So you have to kind of judge the travel time to make sure you keep the debuff up. It's not that fun. So as long as it's like fun to use, yeah, sure. And then I like playing my mage with the Doom Nova trinket. It's fun bursting for 3 million damage sometimes.
So, yeah, exactly. What do you think, Azor? What do you think?
No, I definitely agree that interactive trinkets are the best kind of trinket. Which is why I wish hunters had something cool to play with instead of like a stat stick and a proc one, and then there's mirror, which is I don't know, wishy-washy. It's not exactly super fun. But generally, I like it. Sort of, you know, there's a bit of depth to your choices and like the interactions that two trinket slots might make with each other. So I wouldn't cut it down to one. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, I guess putting it down to one is just weird for me because I always feel like there's this one of your trinket slots is just kind of like there, and then one is like, ooh, that's cool. And I don't know if the game would ever, it feels like maybe it's like item bloat at a certain point. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I have a interesting amount of neat trinkets. I have the Blade Master trinket. I also have the Soul Capacitor too. So I have like things to do with them. But who knows? We'll talk about oranges now. So I'll go back to the normal order for this one, and we're gonna start with Nethramas, the All-Seer, for Warlocks. How does the ring work out for Warlocks, Xyronic?
It works perfectly for Warlocks. Ring's a 2-minute cooldown. Our main cooldown is a 2-minute cooldown. So basically, because of the way we use Archimonde's Darkness, which is a talent that gives us 2 charges of our cooldown, we basically use 1 charge of Dark Soul for every single ring throughout an entire encounter, and then you just have 1 Dark Soul to throw out whenever you get a Trinket proc or during Execute or when there's a lot of targets up to AoE. So it works out pretty well. There's really no complaints about it. I mean, I wish it was a personal use ring, but
right.
What can you do? Yeah, I don't have any complaints about the cooldown at all.
And that works for all 3 iterations of Warlock, though? There's nothing really different
Right,
between the 3 of them?
all the cooldowns throughout are a 2-minute cooldown, 20-second duration, so they're up for every ring for the entire ring, and there's no problems with it. It's
That's
pretty nice.
like... I don't know how more cut and dry you can get with that one. Like, for me, I have
Right.
a 5-minute cooldown, and a 3-minute cooldown, and a 45-second cooldown, and a 2-minute cooldown. But wolves don't really interact with the ring very much. So
Right.
it's different for every class that has, like, tons of different varying cooldowns, and you're just like, it's good.
Yeah, use it on cooldown. I'm
Use
fine.
it on cooldown. Oh. But how about go over to agility stuff? We can go over to Malice, Azortharion. How does it work out for hunters?
Yeah, it's pretty similar for hunters, like it is with warlocks, in that you have a 15-second ring with a 15-second cooldown on a 2-minute cooldown. So that's about as good as it gets, provided that you prepare for it, because like rapid fire is not very strong if you don't like take like 5 to 10 seconds before it comes up to save your focus, like 100 to 120 focus. And ideally, although like your flexibility in this area might vary, having some Thrill of the Hunt stack, so you can just put always critting aim shots into the target, so you'll get focus to do more, and you can basically spend an entire rapid fire with some luck, just spamming your highest damaging spells.
Right. So again, another situation where it just works out peachingly.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't do peachily. I don't know. I made up a word right there.
And
there's no weird interactions. Go ahead.
Yeah, true. And it also, like, because the Mirror of the Blade Master is a 1-minute cooldown,
Right.
that'll also line up every other time. And with that happens when the Mirror of the Blade Master gets to hit 2 targets, because it scales linearly with more targets. If there's 2 targets, it's just double damage. And so if that happens to coincide with the ring and rapid fire, which is, insert some math here, sometimes up to double damage from the ring. I think that's what it is, at 795 anyway. Plus the 40% haste from rapid fire, plus like a couple of more targets. That's like 7 million damage from just the trinket use every other minute.
Now, I don't actually know this myself. I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if I've ever really paid attention to it. Does the Fellstorm spin just gain the flat damage? Does that damage also go into your quarter extra explosion too? Does it get stored?
Yeah, just as a Stampede counts towards the explosion, the mirror damage does as well, and they gain the damage bonus from it as well.
Okay, because it's weird because Soul Capacitor doesn't absorb the Fellstorm, because that doesn't get absorbed into the Soul Capacitor. To my knowledge, I've always looked at this, and whenever you're using absorbed damage, it always has the brackets on them. In damage meters, and I've always seen the Fellstorm always doesn't get absorbed into the absorbed damage for the Soul Capacitor, but it does get absorbed for the ring. So okay, I've learned something today too. So I don't wonder why that is, because I guess the Fellstorm guys are summoned as like a pet ability to some degree, and not being a buff on yourself.
To make. Because they also happen to scale off BM's mastery, which increases pet damage, so they're like definitely a pet, and just as Beast Mastery pets count towards the ring and the explosion, so does the Fellstorm pets.
Right. And as a caveat to that, of course, if Beast Master Hunters know, of course, only get 2 Blade Master mirrors, whereas other classes always get 4. Because of that right there.
Yeah.
If you had 4 all scaling off your mastery, that'd be a little ridiculous.
Yeah. And I guess they scale off Bestial Wrath as well, but I'm not entirely sure on that.
Yeah, if it's a raw
I'm actually gonna go with they don't, because like traditionally no other pets but your main pet are scaled with Bestial Wrath.
I don't know. Might be some dig into, but back to Nithramas for mages, Frosted. How does this work out? I mean, Prismatic Crystal is only a 1.3 minute cooldown, so I assume pretty good?
Yeah, if you're playing Arcane, you generally tend to unglyph Arcane Power. And so all your major cooldowns are a minute and a half, right?
Right.
So you can just really easily hit it on the pole, and you obviously get them all on the pole. And then you just delay them to sync with all the rings after that. And so you pretty much always get a ton of burst with the ring. So for Arcane, it works out really, really well. The only time it doesn't work out well is if you're holding the ring for a really long period of time, right? Because like you say you're killing Fellord too fast and you want it for the 30% burn phase and not in the middle of the fight, right? So you end up having to make the decision between like holding your cooldowns for a really long time or hitting them earlier in the fight. So that's the only little bit of annoying thing that we have to deal with there. For Frost, it's slightly less optimal, right? Because your main cooldown, Icy Veins, is on a 3-minute cooldown. So you have to make the decision between delaying it for like an entire minute, which I tend to do, right? And it still works out pretty okay. It ends up being like DPS neutral to hold it for a minute.
Okay.
But you tend to sync the ring to parts of the fight where you need the DPS most, right?
Sure.
So if it's DPS neutral, but you're shifting that same DPS to where you need it more, it's better to just do it that way. So I mean, it works out painlessly. It's pretty nice.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as we talked about before with the Legend of the Ring on the last many episodes of the Ketchup Junket, you're not just always using the ring, like on the pole, most likely all the time, obviously. Right. Unless it's like Manaroth, because he's got like 18 seconds of RP. So you usually have a plan where your ring's going to be, it's a script, right? You're going to use it here, here, and here. And most fights, depending on how deep you are into farm, you kind of like lose a ring use because the fight dies sooner. So you kind of maybe like even restructure it or like but on fights you're progressing, you kind of know when it's going to happen. And that always doesn't really line up the best for me, for example, like my burst cooldown in Ascendance is a 3-minute. So I only get to have like 1, and then I can delay it by like a minute to 2 minutes for the 3rd. It's not optimal. It's really weird. I actually had a thought bubble running in the chat on the earlier episodes that does your guild do 1, 2, 4, 6, or does your guild go 1, 3, 5, 7? Which the first ring on the pole, and then do you go 3, 5, 7? Do you wait for the first 3-minute cooldown round from your guild, or do you just go mostly the 2, 4, 6 route? So it's propagated some weird ring weaving, and it's better and worse for different classes, but I think it depends on your guild and the fight you're doing. So So we'll jump over to talents now, which all this sort of stuff we've talked about beforehand all sort of leads to the meat, like the middle of the sandwich now, where now we get to pick like what actually works out the best and what has changed for your classes and specs for your talent layouts. And I'll grab Warlocks first. So Xyronic, walk me through some of the talent changes you've, if there's been talent changes for your Warlock specs during Tier 18.
There haven't really been talent changes. There are talent choices still.
Right.
Demon Bolt was really only good for progression before Affliction and Destro got buffed. Demon Bolt was really good at just single target burst situations because Demon Bolt, that's what it's used for. It's a really good burst single target cooldown. But as of now, I would say after the buffs, Cataclysm is the only point when you'd actually play Demo for its AoE burst. So on Manaroth or Zul'Harek or even Cormrock if you're doing that boss.
Right.
That's really the only situation I'd see Demo played now on progression. So yeah, that's Demonology. Soulburn Haunt is just flat out always going to be best for Affliction. It just scales really well with Affliction, and Affliction's always had good scaling, especially with its double dot mechanic through the dots on the target and the dot ticks you get from your Malefic Grasp ticks. And Soulburn Haunt works on both of those. On top of that, Charred Remains for Destruction is just way too good. It dumps down the playstyle of Destruction. It lets you put more nukes into a target in less time. So you always have Embers for Trinket procs. You always have Embers for burst single target parts of the fight. You always run Charred Remains. It's just way too good. Grimoire choices are pretty limited. Destruction always uses Sacrifice because you use Charred Remains. Charred Remains gives you more nukes. Sacrifice makes your nukes do more damage. So they just kind of go hand in hand. Affliction uses Grimoire of Sacrifice on 1 or 2 targets, but it swaps to Supremacy for 3 or more targets, just for pet swapping. And the fact that when you're on 3 or more targets, you're spending more of your time refreshing dots instead of channeling Malefic Grasp.
Okay.
Which is what Sacrifice increases the damage of.
Right.
And Demonology, it depends on whether or not you need more AoE damage or more single target damage. If you really need AoE damage, you can run... I don't even use it anymore, so I don't remember what it's called.
Synergy, I assume?
Synergy is the one you use for single target.
Okay.
Wow. And you use the secondary pet one for more AoE if you really need more AoE. But since you have Cataclysm and Double Chaos Wave already, you usually don't have to use that.
Okay. Yeah, these have always been weird to me for Warlocks because one changes because you get Synergy for Demonology, but you have still Sacrifice for the other 2. And then, of course, Service and Supremacy are the same ones for all 3.
Back in Throne of Thunder, we played Pet Sacrifice Demonology, and I don't think Blizzard liked that very much.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They took out Sacrifice and gave us something else to make it more demon-like.
Right.
And apparently they're going even more demon-like for Legion, so we'll see how that works out.
Yeah.
And as far as Archimonde's Darkness versus KJC and Manaroth's Fury, see, people always argue about KJC as like, oh, well, if you're in a bad position, you could use this to get out of a bad position. But if you're a progression raider who knows what you're doing, especially as a Warlock, you have so many tools to put yourself in a good position, you never need KJC.
Okay.
You have your Portal, you have your Gateway. If you're playing Demo, you have Demon Leap. You really should never be in a bad position as a Warlock, and you have plenty of tools to get out of bad positions. And on top of that, Archimonde Darkness is just a flat-out DPS increase, so you always want to take that.
Right.
Manaroth's Fury... Sorry?
Oh, so right. It's the only one in this tier that actually, like, is a tangible DPS increase. I've always kind of wondered how this is balanced.
Right.
They're all
like... Yeah, Manaroth's Fury on, like, a lot of targets, if you can use it on cooldown when there's a ton of targets up, it could be useful.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, an extra Dark Soul is almost always going to outweigh that anyways.
Right.
So, yeah.
It does have this weird... It's not really a transparent talent tier. I've always thought it's awkward because, like, oh, I get 2 more cooldowns of... I got 1 more cooldown of my 2-minute cooldown. Cool. Or I can, like, move and cast, or my AoE is suddenly better for a limited time. It's...
Right. The only way I could ever see KJC being useful is if they restored it to, like, what it was in MOP, where you could just cast everything on
the move. Yeah.
But that was way too broken.
Well, I mean... But that was the trade-off, because you don't get your extra Archimonde's Darkness, so, you know...
Right.
Indeed. So, we'll head over to Hunters now, then. Azortharion, sorry, you want to walk me through some Hunter talent choices and things?
All right. Well, a lot has changed, of course, because we're playing an entirely different spec now, which is the flavor of the month. The first 2 tiers are generally better in that you'd have more deterrences and more disengages, which is just a huge mobility boost and a defensive boost in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera in the level 15 tier. And Wyvern Sting and Intimidation have little to no place in most PvE content. You had a place for Wyvern Sting back in Blackrock Foundry on the CC boat and Iron Maidens. As we'll get to later, Intimidation is completely useless because it relies on the pet. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Yep. In the level 45 tier, there's a bit of... I'm of the opinion that Acceleration is probably better. And, okay, this is a bit longer one, but I'll try to make it short-ish. The basic idea of me thinking that Acceleration is better is that it'll save your life more than Ironhawk will. while Ironhawk may mitigate more damage than Acceleration will ever heal for,
Sure.
especially if you don't use Acceleration like on cooldown, which you shouldn't. But the idea is that if you don't end up in a bad situation too much, you'll have Acceleration ready for those moments where you're like going low because of, Reign of Chaos landing on Archimon Mythic, or Heroic for that matter. While if you get into nasty situations very often, and Acceleration isn't cooldown, you're basically defenseless, like that's a wasted tier. So it depends on you to not be bad very often.
Right.
For Acceleration to be better. And I find that's like very possible on most encounters. So yeah. As for this level 60 tier, Die Beast is it's dead because that was the single target talent for Beast Mastery back in the day. It scales off of almost all of Beast Mastery's pet mechanics. So, well, now that we play Marksmanship, that's just dead because it doesn't do any damage and it doesn't generate, well, it does do damage, but it's just very little, and it doesn't generate enough focus to make up for that.
Okay.
Then there's Steady Focus, which was good for BM back in BRF because its focus regeneration also affected the pet, which is gained quite a bit for more focus, actually. Which leads us to Thrill of the Hunt, which has a 10% chance per 10 focus spent on focus costing attacks to trigger Thrill of the Hunt, which means that the more focus you spend, the more procs you'll get. And it just so happens that, in general, Marksmanship Hunters spend a lot more focus. In that, like, our focus number is the most expensive of all the specs.
Sure.
And Chimera Shot is the second most expensive of the signature abilities, with Kill Command costing 40 and Explosive Shot costing 15. And it also means that since you have spent a lot of focus off the get-go in the opener, you have a pretty fair chance of getting an opener proc. And because Aim Shot generates 20 focus when it crits, the fact that it with this costs 10 focus because it costs 30 focus. But if you get a proc, which you're fairly likely to do, at least over a number of aim shots, it'll only cost 30 focus and regenerate 20, which almost makes it focus neutral because when it crits like this, like back to back in the open and stuff, that means you'll have a lot of crits, and also means you'll do a lot of damage with these crits, and you generate a lot of focus because of the extra haste you get, 40% pretty rapid fire. So in short, it's pretty damn good because you can not only save it for opportunate moments, but you can also get really big openers. And if you plan it all right, you can get a really good rapid fire and ring overlaps using Thrill of the Hunt and just saving up focus for the right moments.
Right.
Level 75 is Stampede, and that's basically it. Level 90.
I was about to ask, like, it's the Stampede. Okay. That's it.
Yeah, the argument for Murder of Crows lies in that, okay, if you can reset it a lot, then it's good. But the thing is that there are not enough fights where you get... Because you can't just rely on, like, stuff that lives for 2 seconds for Murder of Crows to reset, right? It has to live for, like, most of the duration to be worth it. Else you might as well have spent the 30 focus that a Murder of Crows costs on Aim Shot, which does, like, 100k damage in, like, average Heroic Mythic gear.
Fair enough.
So not really worth it in the instance. 90s. Basically, with the T18 4-piece bonus, you'd always go Power Shot on single target only.
Right.
This is because, like, it does a fair amount of damage, but because your aim shot count is when its aim shot is instant, it's mostly limited by focus. And because Power Shot has the lowest focus cost, tied with Glaive Toss, and the longest cooldown, it takes the least amount of time and focus out of your rotation to use it on cooldown, allowing you to have more aim shots. As soon as you have more targets, Barrage becomes very powerful, but it should generally not be used on like 2 targets. On 3, it gets alright, but it's mostly like saved when, you know, the hands appear on Comrock and stuff like that. Level 100 is Lone Wolf. Especially because, like, it just boosts the damage of most of your major abilities by 30%. There's an argument for Focusing Shot in that it generates a lot of focus, which means more aimed shots. But especially in the progression setting, when you save focus for something like a Doomfire Spirit, you won't even have to regenerate focus before that is dead, which means that focusing shot is basically a wasted talent. You'd rather have 30% damage to all the other things.
I've heard.
And you also.
Oh, go ahead.
Hmm?
I said I've heard that like you take lone wolf on fights that you move a lot, and then fights you can actually like turret. You take focusing shot. Is that?
That used to be the case pretty much, but the thing is, then malice happened, right?
Oh, okay.
Because lone wolf gives you much bigger openers and just much bigger like 2-minute burst windows. Because of course you're supposed to save for it, which means that you spend most of the time just casting instead of generating. Which reduces the value of the extra focus that focusing shot would give you. So especially when you add the ring into that equation, when you stack Lone Wolf's damage bonus to most of your abilities and Rapid Fire giving you a lot of focus to spam those abilities and not have to generate as much. And of course, the ring damage and Thrill of the Hunt and Lone Wolf 30% damage, it's just a better talent, straight up.
All right. That's pretty definitive. I like it. Frosted, sir, let's walk us through some mage talent things. I've got Arcane up right now. Yeah. Well, I mean, Azor went a little deep on that, so which is totally fine. I mean, I didn't know if it depends on how much. I mean, you do have weird things you can do with Ultra Time and Evanesce, so please.
Yeah.
Please.
So for the 15th level 15 tier, never take Blazing Speed. It's usually a choice between Ice Flows and Evanesce. And the decision is, can I abuse a mechanic with Ice Flows or with Evanesce? If yes, then you pick Evanesce. So you can do things like Evanesce away the empowered chains on Xyronic and 3 mages basically trivializes that entire mechanic.
Yep.
Right? You get a weak aura to tell you when it's cast on you, you hit Evanesce, and it just never goes off. But for the most part, you don't pick Evanesce. You usually just pick Ice Flows because it's probably the strongest movement talent in the game, especially when you game it and end up getting like 5 charges out of it.
Yeah,
it's really good.
I heard about this.
Yeah, it's really good. Almost never pick Evanesce. For the next tier, I usually run Flame Glow just because I don't think the GCD on Ice Barrier is worth it.
Right.
And I only switch to Ultra Time if I want to take advantage of the movement. So like you might run it on Xyronic if you're in a bait team, right? So you're really far away from where you need to drop Void Surge. You like hit Ultra Time, run, drop Void Surge, hit it again, and come back quickly.
Yep.
Or if you want to use it for like Empowered Shadow Force on Mana Off, so that you can save your blinks for movement in that phase for some reason. If like something goes wrong and you lose the Warlock portal and it's hard to get out of the gazes or hard to get away from the Fell Seekers, right? You just use Ultra Time to deal with the empowered Shadow Force.
I've got you got Ferdy and Xyronic talking about that Ultra Time's actually a DPS increase too. So how does that work? Because it technically is, right?
No.
No.
I don't know why it would be a DPS increase.
I mean, any reduced movement is a DPS increase, right?
Yeah, I guess if so. Yeah, it is. I mean, on the same page, you can just Ice Flows instead, right? You could just Ice Flows the movement. Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, that's what it is. So I know I think with the old Ultra Time, to my knowledge, you could actually like alter time
your buffs
back to your buff timer, so you can get like longer trinket up times and crap like that. Yeah, that was a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, I guess you can use Ultra Time for DPS gain.
Yeah.
I tend not to use it. I tend to use it to deal with like having to move really long distances and not wanting to move back.
Sure. How about 45s?
Doesn't matter. Just ignore it. You don't use it.
Next?
You don't use any of them.
Okay. 60?
For the 60 tier, you generally just run. I run Greater Invis on almost everything.
Right.
The only time I run Cold Snap is if you're doing the cheese strat on Manaroth. So you're using ice blocks to soak all 4 wraths at once, right?
Oh.
So you run Cold Snap then, right?
Yep.
But besides that, you just run Greater Invis. I guess people like Cauterize. There's an argument that Cauterize is good. It is good. I just don't prefer it. I prefer Greater Invis, so whichever one you like, it doesn't really matter.
You can argue in this regard that both, since Cold Snap and Greater Invis are active abilities, Cauterize is the whoops, I stood in something bad, I didn't die because of it, but I also didn't plan for it, so I guess that's a vindictive way of looking at Cauterize, but I get you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely good on like progression, right?
Sure.
So when you're still learning fights and you kind of haven't gotten your rhythm down and where you need to be moving, and maybe your healers are getting used to like they're lining up their cooldowns, and you might just like die all of a sudden.
Okay.
Cauterize is fine, but I just tend to always like Greater Invis. I feel without it, I don't know. I don't have any really good way to keep myself alive.
I mean, you can scumbag stuff with Greater Invis as well. So
You can scumbag stuff with Greater Invis, yeah.
yeah. So 75.
For the 75s, you tend to almost, once you're in heroic item level gear, like regardless of tier bonuses, you run unstable magic if you're interested in like sustained throughput, right? Or single target sustained throughput, because that's the only thing you do as a mage, really. And then if you want burst damage, like controlled burst, you're going to run the Nova talents. So like if you want controlled burst on the imps on Manaroth, you run Ice Nova, right? If you want burst on Doomfires, you run Ice Nova or Supernova. If you want burst on like Infernals, you run the Nova talents, right?
Sure.
But generally, so that's how you decide, right? Whether you care about sustained throughput or whether you care about dropping some of that sustained throughput for controlled burst.
Are the bombs not good anymore? Another Tempest Living Bomb, Frost Bomb, like not. No?
Nether Tempest, so they kind of conflict with what like mages are good at, right? You play a mage because you have really good single target. You bring a mage for really good single target and really good cleave. You don't bring a mage because you want a ton of AoE. And if you did want a mage for a ton of AoE, you just play fire, right? So like as an arcane mage, if I wanted cleave damage, I wouldn't pick Nether Tempest. I'd play Frost. And if I wanted AoE damage, I wouldn't pick Frost Bomb. I'd play fire, right? So there's never really a reason to use it unless you are in some weird place on like Iskar where you need a bunch of add damage, and for some reason you're not using the blow up, the big phantasmal bird strat. You can run Frostbomb there, I guess. But no, I don't think I've ever used the bomb talents. They're just not as good.
Not as good anymore. All right.
Yeah.
That's fair. So then how do like Mirror Images, Rune of Power, and Incanter's Flow stack up now?
Mirror Images is garbage.
Okay.
Rune of Power is good. Like theoretically, it's the best, but the number of fights that'll let you actually cast it, not force you to cast it too many times and not force you to move out of it,
Right.
are pretty low. Like you can do it on Council. You can maybe do it on Kilrog. Fuck. You can do it on Fellord, right? So those are fights you can use Rune of Power on, but almost all the other fights you tend to run Ice Flow or Incanter's Flow.
Yeah.
And then you just forget about it.
Sure.
Yep.
Alrighty then. So Prismatic Crystal, all the things, or
No, Prismatic Crystal is really good if there's one target, right? So it's great on Iron Reaver, it's great on Fellord, but if there's, because it has Meteor Split damage, right?
yeah.
It actually is really, really bad on fights where there's adds, because all the damage is going to get split, and you're going to end up just not doing a lot of damage. So on fights that are single target, yes, absolutely pick Prismatic Crystal. On fights where there are any adds that Prismatic Crystal is going to cleave on, it's better to just pick like Arcane Orb or Thermal Void or Overpowered. Yep.
That's the one thing I had too about this is like the mage talents always have like this this weird inner built synergy where you always have like this for your 100s anyway. You've got Prismatic Crystal that stays the same for all three. And then you've got like the Comet Storm, Meteor, Arcane Orb, or you have the passive, which increases like your main buffs, right? So you have Overpowered for Arcane Power and Frost for Icy Veins. Like it. Do these work out well in the end? Are they kind of awkward now, or is it better to take?
Not. I mean the Falling Stars talents, so like your Meteor and Comet Storm, those have the same problem as Prismatic Crystal where they're split damage when there's multiple targets, right? So it's like they're not as good as Prismatic Crystal on single target, and then they have the same problem as Prismatic Crystal on multiple targets. So they just don't ever really have a reason to be used. I guess unless you're like for some reason you can play with Meteor and get the adds to sit in the fire that it puts on the ground, but that's not really reasonable. So you tend not to choose those talents. And then there's Arcane Orb in there, which you only use as an Arcane Missile Generator. And as for them being awkward, they're not awkward. Like the passives aren't awkward either. You don't change the way you play. Like you don't change the way you use Ice Lances when you're using Thermal Void. You don't change the way you're using Arcane Missiles really when you're playing with Overpowered. So they're just kind of there. You just choose them. They're the best option. That's not Prismatic Crystal, and they're a DPS increase, which is, I guess, all you really want.
All right. Well, that's a little definitive, I suppose, in that regard. It definitely has changed to some degree.
Yeah.
Over tier 17 to tier 18, how the talents
Yeah.
have been. So, because I
Yeah,
know
you don't use unstable magic. We never really use unstable magic
back
in
in
17.
No, the original, I think, look at when we looked at mage like early on. This one was brought up because we had mages relatively soon. I know
Right.
unstable magic was like becoming a new thing, but back in like Highmall and whatnot, it was
Yeah, you just ran Ice Nova or Frostbomb back then.
right.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, there's been, I know for Frost at least, Ice or Unstable Magic has become so strong because they, in this tier, they gave 20% buffs to Frostbolt and Frost Firebolt, and Unstable Magic is just the percentage damage proc off of Frostbolt and Frost Firebolt, right? So when you buffed those things by a huge amount, you kind of, the trickle down effect is that Unstable Magic became a lot stronger. And then the 2-step bonus for Frost is even more damage on Frost Firebolt, right? So there's been a lot of things that have buffed Unstable Magic, right? And then just in general scaling, it scales a lot better than like Supernova does for Arcane, especially with Haste. And now that we're stacking Haste, Unstable Magic gets a lot better.
All right. Anything else that you guys wanted to touch on real quick before I take us on a little bit of break and then come back and take questions from chat?
Not really.
No? Xyronic, you good?
I'm good.
Azortharion, you good, sir? Good?
Good.
Good?
Roll the commercials, babe.
Roll the commercials. I like it. Can you do that buffer for me real quick? One more time.
Roll the commercials, babe.
Oh, I love it. I'll take a quick little moment real quick to tell you guys about some communities behind the scenes. A brand new one, in fact. A development on one big one that you might have heard about. And then we'll come back and take some questions from chat for the end of the show. So first up, of course, you may have used this website. You may have heard of it and not used it, but it's still very much there, and even got better with the pre-made group finder tool in-game. But OpenRaid, openraid.org, as the website is easily the best place to go find other raids, fun stuff to do on the weekends. If you're new to raiding scene and you want to find a raid group, and you don't have like logs yet, you don't have enough like things to build up or reputation online, this is your best stop. Honestly, I've had many people in chat and many lurkers may be like nodding their head real quick that they've used OpenRaid before, but this is a great place to go and find events. Like I'll click on the events button literally right now, and there are 353 upcoming events. The latest ones upcoming now are there's a heroic TOT speedrun coming up for that transmog gear, I assume. There's some normal Archimond. There's some heroic HFC, fresh guild run, right? Like some people just run events just off of Open Raid just to have raids every week. So if you want to raid and you haven't yet or haven't in a long time or you're coming back to the game, go make an account on Open Raid, set that up, and go find some that are in your time. There's tons of options for you. Additionally, there's a huge change coming soon. You may have heard of Zerg ID. It's sort of in a very open beta phase right now, but Open Raid is eventually going to be changing a lot next summer to be incorporated into the Zerg ID IP, where it will have guild functions for, I believe, Guild Wars 2. It may even have SWTOR, I'm not sure. I know there's going to be League of Legends and Heroes of the Storm integrations as well. So it's going to be a multi-platform for not just World of Warcraft, but also a lot of other games that many of us may play. So stay tuned for that, of course. Additionally, a new website just popped up the other day. This has nothing to do with our classes today, but if you are a Resto Shaman, people always asked me, there's like no big resources for Resto Shaman. Like they've not had a great place. But a couple great Resto Shamans have banded together to make chainheal.com, which is going to have mythic guides for every encounter. They're literally still working on them right now. They have an Ask Us Anything forum where you can send in Resto Shaman-oriented questions. They'll have PTR and beta coverage once it happens. They have different builds for cooldowns, glyphs, spells, stats, talent trees, totems, and utility. A whole bunch of cool graphs on their pages. Really pretty, nice stuff. The totems and overview page is actually really cool. So you guys can go check that out if you're a Resto Shaman, if you play one as an alt, or if you're, coming back to play, or if you just want to check out an awesome community site, go check out chainheal.com. They're also on Twitter. Go show them some love. And of course, you want to show some love to the show and get something back for it and help support what we do here. We have our Designed by Humans page where you can purchase tank tops and t-shirts and baseball tees and hoodies and sweatshirts and phone cases and art prints and a whole bunch of stuff. We just recently relaunched all of the 4 little final bosses by Fabelina. that are on here right now. Little Dark Lady's so cute. Oh my god. And then, of course, both of the Method World First shirts are here. This is the one for Hellfire Citadel, as well as the one for Black Hand. Then you can like maybe blame this weird Celestial Dragon if you want, or not. I mean, you have options there too. And that goes all to support Final Boss TV and what we do here. And of course, all of our shows are on iTunes and Stitcher, as well as our YouTube links down below the stream if you've missed an episode. There's also the channel guide button, which is a huge Google document of all the episodes we've done, all the special interviews we've done, the Square Table chat, the dev interviews, the retro raid races, the epic WoW battles for history. All the catch-up episodes are all in that channel guide and all on our YouTube page as well. So, without any more jibber-jab from me, let's open it up and take some questions from the chat room.
Welcome back to the Final Boss Show, the Mob and Mini Inquiry, viewer questions.
Oh, that's amazing. I ought to get you to record some of the sound bites. Somebody use those. Oh, man. But if you guys have any questions for us, you can send it on Twitter at FinalBossTV or just ask us in chat. We've got about a good 15 minutes, I think we'll do. 12, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, somewhere in there. Don't want to last too long here, but I think we're looking good for time. So please feel free to ask away as I close a whole bunch of stuff. My browser stops freaking out. So, yeah, if you got Warlock questions, Mage questions, or Hunter questions, go for it. I know, like, Xyronic, for example, has been typing a lot in chat, and so is Azortharion Frosted, so they answer stuff during the show. If you're watching on YouTube right now, or listening to it on iTunes or Stitcher, I feel bad because you're not getting the direct interaction there, but that's fine. Boop, 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 ba-doo. Oh, Pyromancer quiet. Oh my goodness.
I see one question.
Oh yeah? What you got?
Okay, Northern Man asks, this is a series of questions that relate to each other. First, for a hunter friend, how many percent is your white DPS from the whole sum? Now I just went to my Archimond log, and white I'm assuming just means auto shot was 7.16% of my damage that try. Which is like 5th in the lineup, so yeah.
That's fair. Not too bad. Oh, here's one. This is for Mages and Warlocks. I guess I didn't bring this into the main part of the show. So for Warlocks, Mr. In Your Head wants to know, is it better to run one-hander offhand or two-hander?
Well, the
Higher
only
level?
highest level staff is it's a staff. It's a two-hander. So if you can get an Archimond staff, it's basically based off of item level. That's all it is.
It's the same for Mage.
Same for
Whatever the
mages.
highest item level you can get during progression, because you're going to have more spell power, it's going to be worth more.
Oh, okay. Whoops, hit the wrong button. That's fair. All right, I didn't know if that was still, like, even if a higher level staff, you can still have an offhand, main hand that are, like, 5 each low, but nope.
Nope.
Just highest eye level. All right.
Yep.
That's easy. What's the best... I guess I can do this to all three of you. Let's do Warlocks first, since it was aimed at Warlocks first. Zash wants to know, what's the best race for Warlock? I guess you can say one on both sides of the line on Alliance and Horde.
Well, I don't really know Alliance races. I've never played Alliance. I've kind of dabbled in it a bit. But
Fair.
as far as Horde goes, for Affliction, Troll is still the best because of the haste bonus you get with your cooldowns. Orc might slightly get better since you can use it for every ring as the ring gets better and better. And Orc is best for both Destro and Demo.
Okay. Frosted? For mages, what do you think?
Sorry, what I was reading chat. What am I saying?
What race combos are best for mages? On
Oh,
Alliance
I
and
think
Horde?
it's like a wash in terms of DPS. Unless you have the ring, and I think it's trolls once you have the ring. I'm
Just
pretty sure
trolls.
it's trolls. Yeah, I think it's trolls once you have the ring. If you're syncing the cooldown to the ring.
What about Alliance? Do you know for Alliance?
I don't know for Alliance.
Just say Panda.
I know. I mean, I know that it's like if you don't have an active, they're all within like error of DPS. It's completely meaningless.
Oh.
I play Blood Elf, and I picked Blood Elf because I wanted to play Blood Elf, not because of like DPS, because the DPS changes are so small. Right.
What about for Hunter?
For Horde, Blood Elf is by far and away the best.
Oof.
It has a 1% crit, which is, a best stat, so that's pretty good. And it has, now on a 1.5 minute cooldown, it has a 15 focus, which is not a lot, but it doesn't seem like a lot anyway. But focus is worth so much to us during a burst phases, at which point you would make Arcane Torrent, the focus regeneration, line up. That you can then get like often another aimed shot into the ring and the rapid fire.
Yeah, Arcane Torrent's kind of good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And for Alliance, the answer is Dwarf, which has 1% crit damage. And because we crit so much in the opener within the ring especially, just like boosting our opener that little bit by 1% more damage from most of the abilities put in the opener is what makes Dwarf really good.
Why are you a Worgen then?
Because Worgen look amazing.
That's the caveat, right? You can play Dwarf, but...
Yeah, no thanks.
Worgen look amazing. Okay.
Sorry, Dwarf Hunters.
Oh, gosh. Poor Dwarf Hunters. Oh, my goodness. That's... That's really funny. Ferdy says gnomes for the extra mana for mages, I guess, or for
yeah.
for
I think
warlocks?
gnomes are technically the highest for arcane.
Ooh, okay.
Again, the difference isn't that large.
We didn't really go over any glyphs. Tolax wants to go over glyphs. I guess we can go around real quick. Warlock, Hunter, Mage. Are there any glyphs of really high importance to make sure you are using for warlocks? Xyronic?
For Affliction, you definitely want to have Glyph of Soul Swap. Even though you don't use Soul Swap that often, it's like if you're playing Affliction and you want to swap to a new target, Soul Swap, it costs a shard, but it allows you to instantly put all 3 of your dots with a fully stacked Agony on the new target, and that's pretty useful. Glyph of Unstable Affliction can be a single target DPS increase sometimes, but if your cast time is already under the GCD, it's basically useless. You can use Glyph of Soulstone, but I only use Soulstone to precast Soulstone on someone. Sitting there and casting a Soulstone in the middle of a fight is kind of silly when you have a Druid or a DK in your raid that can do it instantly.
Sure.
But precasting a Soulstone before the fight is always useful. And if you want to do that, you want to have them at 100% HP. Just base glyphs, always use Siphon Life if you can get away, if you have a slot for it. And for fights where you're doing burst AoE as Destro or Demo, you use Glyph of Dark Soul.
Okay. Azortharion, Hunters, anything for marksman that's really important?
Not overly important. I think just as for the hunters in general, you should have the disengage glyph for longer disengages, which is 25 yards. I think it's good to know that figure because sometimes you can, before combat starts, find out how long you can travel with and such. And the second one should be deterrence, because sometimes you're just looking to reduce damage taken. And it increases the damage reduction granted by 20%. The third is a wash. You can either choose Chimera Shots, which causes the 9-second cooldown spell to heal you for 2% of your maximum health, which is pretty good, but unlikely to save your life, which is why I lean towards Pathfinding, actually, which increases the speed bonus of your Aspect of the Cheetah and Aspect of the Pack by 8%. And when you combine that with the minor glyph for Aspect of the Cheetah, which means that when you get struck while in Aspect of the Cheetah, you just lose the buff, but you don't get dazed. And all your... that's actually all it causes now, because before it put all your aspects on a cooldown, which was bad when Aspect of the Iron Hawk existed, but that's no longer the case. So now it's just like, if you have the glyph getting struck by something while you're in Aspect of the Cheetah, has no penalty. Which means that it basically turns into a no cooldown speed increase of... it's 38% until you get struck by something, but that's usually enough. And Pathfinding just increases that speed bonus from 30 to 38%.
Okay.
And I guess it makes you mount faster, so that's great for getting around the platform on Manoroth before combat. Yeah.
What about for mages, Frosted?
Glyphs?
Yes.
For Frost, you have to run Icy Veins and Splitting Ice. They're totally not optional. And then I run Glyph of Rapid Displacement, so it's the double blink glyph, right? So I run that for both, or for any spec that I play, really. I think it's really useful, and I would honestly call it mandatory, because the utility of it is so powerful. And then for Arcane, I use Glyph of Slow, and that's really it. There's no other mandatory glyphs that you have to run. You switch in Arcane Power when you're doing Gorefiend, right? So that you can have the extended duration on Arcane Power during the feasts. But beyond that, once you have the Archimon Trinket, you typically don't want a Glyph Arcane Power.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
I see a bit of an off-topic question in there about Elemental Shamans.
Yeah?
And about how multi-strike would work.
Go for it.
Elemental Shamans, well, multi-strike was their mastery in MOP. They might go back to something like that, or they'll just have to rework it because it'd be really weird not having multi-strike the way the current spec plays.
Right. But you kind of went over
We
that
don't
a
know
little
anything yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have said before on past shows that I think the removal of multi-strike going into Legion is a good thing as a whole, but certain classes or specs more specifically actually kind of benefit from that. So I wonder what they're going to do for like Frost Mage, Holy Priest, Elemental Shaman, you know, Windwalker Monk. Like, how are they going to like make it so they still have that interaction? Because it's very good and very integral to their core. But
Haste. We should go back to Haste, probably.
maybe.
Frost
We'll
Mage
see.
will probably go back to Haste. Yep.
We'll have to see. This is kind of an open-ended question. For all of you, I'll go with Xyronic first again. What class would you play if you didn't play your current one?
I'd probably play either Doom Nova or Ellie Shaman. One of those two.
That's the name of the class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are my two highest leveled alts right now.
Okay.
I enjoy playing both of them quite a bit.
What would you play, Azor?
Probably Feldred. I just think they're pretty cool and they're pretty fun to play. It's the only ult I can like tolerate, but in fairness, I haven't given others many tries, honestly.
Right.
I guess I could do with being top DPS with Doom Nova. Pretty good class.
It's a pretty good class. So what would you then? What would you play, Frosted, if you couldn't play Doom Nova?
Probably I couldn't play Doom Nova. That's fucked up, man. You know, we're called mages. I'd probably play a warrior or an elemental shaman.
Okay.
Yeah. Or I guess if it, I don't know. I play warrior elemental shaman because I think they're cool. But if it was like for my raid spot, I'd probably play like a hunter. Yeah.
Well, in a world where not every class is flavor of the month every other patch.
Except Marksmanship Hunter.
You do it so much better than me, man. Oh my goodness, exactly. Yeah, we'll have to see. Because the DPS disparity right now from top to bottom from different classes and specs is like 18 to 23%. It's pretty rough. So obviously there are certain outliers that are better. So, This one came up from Northern Man again. For mages and warlocks, would it make sense for wands to do at least the same amount of white DPS as hunters, since they are range weapons? If wands damage scaled from magic power, well, I guess spell power, and not from ranged attack power. I mean, this is nostalgic for me before I set this one up, as I watched a whole bunch of like old videos where I saw mages like wanding and stuff to like get mana back and whatever. Is that just part of the game just dead? I mean, what do you guys...
Guess. I mean, I think it would be one of those things where like, who would do that anyway, right? Like...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that would do. Maybe if they brought back mana as a resource that Fire and Frost cared about, and you could go maybe that would be useful. But without that, I don't really see why you would want that.
Yeah, I don't really see what that would actually bring to the game. It would just give you a little extra damage. They'd have to weave it into like you would have to auto attack to get something back, which could be interesting, but I don't really see what the point of that would be.
I think from a flavor standpoint, it might be cool for mages, since like a wand is a very mage-ish sort of thing, because we don't have wizards, I guess, in this game. You're the closest thing to a wizard we have, so...
Right.
Yeah. It came up in chat as well as Twitter. Frost's Twitter handle is without the ED portable, but I gotcha. Can you go over Fellmouth Frenzy versus Stat Food?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. So Fellmouth Frenzy tends to be DPS increased for both Frost and Arcane on like single and 2 targets.
Oh.
So I personally just run Fellmouth Frenzy all the time. It's a million times easier to fish. It's super cheap, and I'm really lazy. So it's perfect, right? I mean, it's the best option. So I just go with Fellmouth Frenzy all the time.
Does that have any implication for warlocks at all? Xyronic?
No, we don't use Fellmouth Frenzy for any of our specs. It could be like argued for as Affliction if you're stacking haste, but otherwise not really.
Not really. Yeah, I've never seen it that good on certain classes. I don't know. Hunters aren't using it at all, right?
No, you'd use the crit food until you hit like the super soft cap at 53% crit, at which point you go multi-strike food.
Go multi-strike food. Okay. Yeah, and I'm just haste or mastery food. Mastery for AoE or for elemental fusion, and haste for single target. If I'm using usually storm elemental. So do 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 do. Let me see. I'm behind
Someone
in
asked-
chat. I'm just checking through for questions.
Someone asked, "What's the best DPS rotation guild for Warlock?" I should think you meant guide for Warlocks out there. Yeah, there's really no like Warlock section of the internet right now.
But you and Knots have put together some stuff.
Yeah, me and Not both have guides for all three specs. Ferdy also has a guide on MMO Champion. There's Icy Veins, which is run by Zagim, who has quit recently, but he was a good Warlock who kept those guides up to date. I think Dark Intentions is still up. There's also an IRC channel. There's plenty of resources out there. Oh, and Pyro also has a Destro guide on YouTube.
Who's that guy?
Some guy.
I need to I guess that caveats into the Firelord's favorite page, which I'm building on the FinalBossTV website for a shameless self-plug on my own show. That it's going to be a place that lists a lot of these websites and places to go. And for specific Google document guides, I have a handful of them already in the channel guide. And I do hope to expound upon that and add a whole bunch more, so that if you're looking for a guide for a class or spec, it will be in the channel guide here on FinalBossTV, or for community-based like websites, you'll be able to actually get different banner ads or links, I guess, on the Firelord's favorite page to find different resources for different classes. Like Chain Heal will be up there, you know, Acarus, stuff like that will all be in one place. Ravenholt, Altered Time, so. But I'm not going to be linking like Google document guides in that regard, but they'll be in the channel guide, which you could then just access through a chat command to give you the Google document, which I hope to keep updated into Legion, but I know things are going to change, so. But as I propagate that information out more and more, I hope that the document creators just come to me and like, hey, this is this guide here, put that out there. So it's very helpful to have it all in one place.
It's pretty good that the like theory crafting community for across classes is pretty intermingled, like on the IRCs and everything.
Yeah.
So like getting you know, those docs to you should be pretty easy.
Here was a question I think you might have answered before, Azor, but Hunter question, read a Hunter guide, and one of the things made me wonder, you said to avoid using rapid fire during heroism. If that's the case, when will you use rapid fire when we have heroism on the pull, and how to make it work together with ring usage? Or is that devalued now because of the aim shot interaction?
Well, I never said that. I don't know what's being read. It's I just never said that, mostly because it's completely infeasible to work around it.
Oh, okay.
And because like rapid fire is worth so much in the opener, regardless of ring or not, that the fact that you get a bit of diminished returns because crit on crit and everything, and because steady shot goes under the global casting time cap, even though that happens, you don't spend a hell of a lot of time casting. So.
Okay. So you just still use it regardless of heroism or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No considerations there.
I mean, the aim shot buff is enough to, you know, you probably just need to have it during there, so. Yep. Let's see. Got a couple more minutes. I'm just kind of scrolling through chat here to find questions I may have missed or whatnot. Sometimes because Chatroom is busy, it's better to send them in on Twitter, but only a couple got sent in there, of course. John on Twitter wanted to know, what are your 3 guest thoughts on soloing capabilities? I mean, we have a hunter here that can solo pretty much anything in the game, I suppose. Is that a thing? I don't know. Different classes had different capabilities. No one's at Blood DK, so...
I know hunters have Shoot, who does a lot of hunter soloing.
Ooh, okay.
They're pretty good. They're probably the best for soloing right now, I'd imagine, besides Blood Decay. Also, Warlocks can solo old content, but only if your name is Snowball.
Is that yeah?
Yeah, he's crazy. But yeah, I don't really know much about mages.
Okay.
think there's a website dedicated to hunter soloing actually.
Is
I think
there?
Shoot would appreciate if we plug it just real quick.
Well, I mean, you can throw it in chat. Absolutely, go
Yeah,
for
if we
it.
can just find it.
Yeah.
If Shoot is there, he can link his website, which is like dedicated to the art of hunter soloing and whatnot. I don't remember its name right now, so yeah, check that out if you're a hunter and you like soloing.
Anything for mages for soloing? I don't know. You don't have any.
Not that I
really
know
any-
of.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah. Get a bunch of leech and then
Get a bunch
Hopefully-
of leech.
hopefully do a bunch of damage. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Another one came from Northern Man. Blizzard making the Fire Mage's artifact a sword. Could weapon damage be included in rotations? I guess that's a broad question because
Really hope not.
weapons are just like a flat stat stick for you guys. Hopefully they become part of your animations. Damn it.
Yeah,
as
that'd be okay.
casters.
But I don't want to be in melee range. That's awful.
Well, no. Like your fireballs would like come out of your sword or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
that's fine.
Yeah, right.
That'd
Battle
be cool.
Mage.
Yeah.
That'd be fine. I'd be okay with that. But I thought the original wording of the question was like, you want weapon damage, like swinging your weapon to actually
No, weapon
matter.
damage.
No.
I mean, it said it can be included into rotations. I would think that that's not about actually doing damage in melee unless you're like, a battle mage spec, which is very Dragon Age style. But what if like weapon damage factored into like your spell damage? That'd be kind of a weird thing.
Does it matter? I mean, weapon
Yeah.
damage, spell power,
Yeah.
it's the same number that's going to be dictated by item level. It doesn't really matter to me.
Blizzard's game with World of Warcraft is not incredibly fantasy driven in that regard. The weapons for casters have always been like just stat sticks, which is just kind of how it goes.
Right.
Yeah.
So they've never been like, a fire mage doesn't get like an ability to like run into melee range and like fire slash for a huge dot and then you blink out to go do your whatever you're doing. Like, there's no interactions for that, which they want to increase the fantasy in Legion, so who knows what's gonna happen. I just hope that casters get not all the spells go to the same part of the body on every mob, because that looks just kind of boring after a while, having one hitbox in a mob, and that your spells interact with your cast times. So the different interactions with how you cast spells with your weapons. Because they could do that with artifact weapons, because you're only going to have that one the whole tier. So
Right. Yeah. I don't really like. So the artifact system, I'm kind of worried about. I hope I don't have to maintain 3 weapons.
well,
And I hope that they're not all upgraded individually in terms of like their weapon stats.
you may not have a lot
That
of
would-
fun in the expansion.
That'd be awful. I don't want to do that. Yeah, that would suck.
They've soft confirmed that inter-spec artifacts will be easier to
Yeah.
maintain, but they're all individual, it sounds. So
Yeah, how easy it's going to be to... Yeah, because right now I can just use the same staff for everything,
sure.
right? Right.
Yeah. Indeed.
That'll suck.
Is there a haste cap for arcane mages?
No. There's not.
That's not what you said before the show.
I mean,
There's no cap. There's no
The
cap,
Arcade Mage Haste Cap.
There's
Is it
no-
there?
there's
Is
no
it gone?
cap. right?
Find out
You'll-
on Sunday.
You'll never cap, right?
Okay.
You'll really, so number one, Simcraft isn't going to give you a good estimation of haste because reasons that are posted online and you can go read them.
Okay.
But haste very, very slowly loses value over time, right? Like as you get more haste. So eventually you do want to stop gearing haste, right? But you can't, but like not everything is the same item level. So there's never a situation where you can just say, I want to make an equal item level trade of haste for like mastery or haste for multi-strike.
Okay.
So it ends up being like a question of like, how much haste do I have? What's the item level of that piece versus what stats am I gaining and what's the item level of that piece, right? So it ends up being not something as simple as just like gear to 1200 haste and then stop, right? And the DPS gains are really minimal whether you like make it perfect or not. So that's why I say just gear haste. It doesn't matter. Like you'll at most when you're in Mythic Best in Slot have to run into this problem of haste devaluing itself below mastery to the point where the higher item level mastery gear, because mastery gear is higher item level on average, is worth picking up over it, right? So just go haste and don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's not a big deal.
Anything else that you guys caught in chat? Because I think we're just about at time, which I think is good. Got a whole bunch of good questions, back and forth. But I guess additional questions can be brought to our guest directly, because I'm gonna hit the button. I'm gonna make an executive decision, and there it goes. Thank you all so much for tuning in to episode number 98 of Final Boss TV, your Wild and Gay rating show. Of course, anything you want to find out about Final Boss TV, our past episodes, and the like is all on just FinalBoss.tv. It's tough to find us on the internet. It's a thing. But thank you all so much for being here. Around the table again real quick, we had Xyronic representing Warlocks today. You can go on Twitter and follow him. It's Xyronic. Wow. What I was talking about for extra questions. They can just ask you questions on Twitter, right? Are you good for that?
Oh, yeah. They can follow me. They can ask me questions on Twitter. They can tune into my stream. I'm pretty open.
Right. And you post when you stream, too, so they can come bother you on there.
Yep.
That's fair.
All
I mean,
the time.
Sounds good to me, sir. Thank you for being on the show. It was awesome. Thank you. There's this guy over here. You can't see him. He's right there. He's Azortharion.
Hello.
He's apparently a
Hello.
Morgan in real life. He's also on Twitter at the same name with a Z on the end.
Yeah, Azortharions.
Zzz. Yes, Azortharion.
Yeah.
Exactly. His guide's also located in the chat here, too. More guides will be available in the future, but thank you for being on the show again, sir. It's always awesome. Thank you.
Pleasure to be around.
Thank you for the movie announcer voice.
No problem, babe.
And then there's Frosted for mages. You can follow him on Twitter as well at Frost1129 or 1129 or 1129 or however you want to put it.
Whichever way works.
However it works.
Yep.
And then, of
Whichever
course,
works
go
for you.
find your theory crafting stuff on Altered Time, correct?
Yeah, Twitter's probably not the best way to get a hold of me. Definitely just PM me on Alter Time or make a post in the help section there, and I usually check that stuff every day.
That's fair. Well, plugging your Twitter works because the website for Altered Time is also right there, so...
It is. Yeah, it's linked right there. Yep.
Thank you so much for being on the show, sir. It was awesome. Thank you,
Yep,
thank you.
Thanks for the invite.
And thank everyone for, of course, tuning in. Everyone behind the Final Boss TV, thanks you for your time. And next week's show, we'll be back to Plate Tanks. We'll be doing Blood Death Knight, Protection Paladin, and Protection Warrior. We did Avoidance Tanks last time. There's a melee DPS, range DPS tank healer combo. So 99 will be Plate Tanks, and 100 will be healers of nature and water and mists and things. So more details on the guests coming up on the shows are on the social media, on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow us there. For details, if you have questions for Blood DKs, Prot Warriors, or Prot Paladins, send us in the Ask a Boss pushes down below, or just we'll see you here next week. Thank you all for tuning in so much. We'll see you in the YouTube comments, see you on Twitter, see you wherever we see you on the internet, and until then, trusting your seal of inevitable gold. That's all you get right now. I mean, I just dunked 4. Gold, and gloves I don't need. I'm sure everyone in chat's like, oh yeah, I know. But have a great one, everybody, and we'll see you later. And bye. Bye. Wave bye to nice people. Wave at them.
I'm waving.
They,
Fuck.
they can't see you. How do they know you're waving?
I don't know.
Azor ruins it again.
Just keep going for it, Azor. Just
Slash
keep going.
wave.
That works.